Well, howdy, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Today's Bread. Now, this week's topic is expectations for everyday living, and our focus today is be good to each other. Now, the scripture reference is Romans 12, verses 9 through 13. Now, verse 9 begins a list of nearly 24 distinct and critical principles that will impact Christians in very practical, everyday ways. Now, Paul opens this section with a foundational command: let love be without hypocrisy. In other words, Christian love is not to be shallow, performative, or selective. It must be genuine, following from a transformed heart and expressed consistently in both words and actions. This opening statement sets the tone for everything that follows, reminding believers that authentic love shapes every aspect of our daily living. Paul then explains that sincere love requires discernment. God expects believers not only to avoid evil, but to actively hate it, while at the same time clinging tightly to what is good. Verse 9. This raises an important question. How does a Christian know the difference between good and evil? Well, at its simplest, what is good honors God, reflects His character, and aligns with His holy and perfect will. What is evil stands in opposition to God's nature and purposes. Christian love, then, is not morally neutral. It is rooted in truth and guided by God's standards. This kind of love becomes visible in our relationships with one another. Paul turns to the horizontal dimension of faith by describing how believers are to treat fellow Christians in verse 10. Loving devotion, brotherly affection, and a willingness to honor others above oneself should mark the Christian community. Rather than competing for recognition or insisting on personal rights, believers are called to outdo one another in showing honor, a radical and countercultural way of living. Paul continues by emphasizing the attitude behind these actions in verse 11. Christians are not to drift into spiritual laziness or half-hearted service. Instead, devotion to one another flows from a deeper devotion to the Lord, serving God fervently with spiritual passion and intentionality. It fuels a lifestyle that reflects Christ to others. This mindset naturally produces endurance and joy, even in difficult seasons. That's verse 12. Hope anchors the believer, joy sustains the heart, and patience enables perseverance through trials. Now, finally, this love takes on tangible form through generosity and hospitality. That's verse 13. Meeting practical needs and opening our lives to others demonstrates that genuine love is not merely spoken, it is lived. Together, these verses remind us that being good to each other is not optional or even occasional. It is the daily, visible evidence of a life that's surrendered to Christ and shaped by His love. Thank you, and I pray that these videos, in fact, all of our posts, are a blessing in your life. Well, Wednesday's prayer focus for America is that truth will rise above lies, confusion, and propaganda. Now remember, Jesus is coming back soon. Here's Wednesday's blessing. Be strong and courageous. Why? Because God is for those who are for Him. I pray that you have enjoyed today. Now, let the bread of life sustain you.